当见天为主天中的巴罗桑扎里夏拉索瓦雷，你为皆为天前见为心，即为天为王国将为阳，常见天为主天中的巴罗桑扎给夏索瓦雷。波罗蜜多心经，观自在菩萨心生波罗蜜多时，照见五蕴皆空，度一切苦厄。舍利子，舍不异空，空不异色，色即是空，空即是色。受想行识亦复如是。舍利子，是诸法空相，不生不灭，不垢不净，不增不减，是故空中无色，无受想行识，无眼耳鼻舌身，无色声香味触法，无眼界，乃至无意识界，无明亦无明尽，乃至无老死亦无老死尽，无苦尽，灭道无惧，亦无得，亦无所得，故菩提萨埵依般若波罗蜜多，故心无怪，无怪故无有恐怖，远离颠倒梦想，究竟涅槃。三世诸佛依般若波罗蜜多，故得阿耨多罗三藐三菩提。故知般若波罗蜜多是大神咒，是大明咒，是无上咒，是无等等咒，能除一切苦，真实不虚。故说般若波罗蜜多咒，即说咒也。揭谛揭谛，波罗揭谛，波罗僧揭谛，菩提萨婆诃。云霄三藏诸烦恼愿得智慧真明了。不愿在爱障迹小 行菩萨道。妙相遍土，华三智大利，须弥世充日月，所传言，今如佛土。金供养，愿主有情共享，自净土一当古如拉那面对那个尼亚那亚贝。
So today, here we have, we are going to do the spiritual discourse on the dharma. When you were reciting the Mixima mantra, praise of Master Tsongkhapa, when I was hearing it, I remembered. I was reminded of my birthplace, which is quite near to where Tsongkhapa was born. So my way of thinking and is very similar to Jesung Rinpoche himself. I find this to be the case. So Rinpoche, Master Tsongkhapa, and I were born quite close. Our birthplace are quite close to each other. So Rinpoche intentionally took birth in Tibet for the sake of the Dharma, and particularly the Tibetan tradition of Buddhism. He intentionally took birth in Tibet. So I also am supposed to be like that, intentionally having taken birth. So if I am not careful, I would be disgraced to the Amdovas, the people of Amdo, because Rinpoche was also from Amdo, and I also was from Amdo. So Tsongkhapa, so Rinpoche's fame spreads the whole three worldwide world systems. So because of the vicinity of our birthplace, I have also had quite a close feeling with Tsongkhapa, Shujelo Santagpa. Dharma Lord Losang Chakpa. So though we are, as Tibetans, we are refugees, we are in exile, we are exiles, but with regard to the teaching of the Buddha, for it to survive, there is no need for a particular, we don't need to be in a particular land or country as such. So Tsongkhapa's teaching and Buddha Dharma in general and the teaching of the Buddha and the Tibetan Buddhist tradition and Tsongkhapa's tradition have spread throughout the world today. So I do my best to clarify about this teaching tradition of the Buddhist tradition of Tibet to the best of my ability. When I was in Tibet, so since leaving Tibet, I have been in Dharamsala almost, but my most important practice is comprised in the 18 volumes of writings of Tsongkhapa, which I read often. And in my mind also, I have a special feeling for Tsongkhapa, Choje Losang Chakpa, Dharma Lord Losang Chakpa, Tsongkhapa. So from our exile here, we are going to do the teaching on commentarial explanation or guided teaching of Tsongkhapa's three principal aspects of the path. With regard to Je Rinpoche Lama Tsongkhapa, of course, we were born in close to one another's birthplaces. So I will go through the teaching on the three principal aspects of the path by Je Rinpoche, Je Tsongkhapa. Since we became exiles all these years, the soul of Tibetan identity is the Buddha Dharma. It has been the case. So we have kept it very held it quite tightly with us. We have preserved it quite well, in other words. And so today in the world, with regard to the upholding the teaching of the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, which is done in our tradition through study and practice, and therefore many people who have interest in the Dharma pay attention to our tradition. And so, since my childhood, I have been studying the books written by Tsongkhapa, and therefore Buddhism, and particularly the tradition of Tsongkhapa, I feel that I have a special connection through my prayers, past prayers, and karma with the teaching, and particularly the Tsongkhapa's tradition. So let's have tea.
文殊师利永士语自在，智慧妙平充满至甘露，广大持教细海美庄严，至圣手持白莲我供养。
So that was blessing. So there's a saying that the Buddha Dharma would spread from north to north. So after his enlightenment, the Buddha gave teaching in India. He taught the Four Noble Truths, and then after that, the Buddha Dharma spread from India to Tibet and Mongolia. And the spread of Buddhism was quite intense and widespread. So until now, Buddhism had spread all over Tibet, including the Dodudome area. But despite all the atrocities meted out on Tibetans by the Chinese communists, the Tibetans have held the Buddhist tradition very strongly. And after coming into exile, the Tibetans in exile, lay and monastics, also held up this tradition quite strongly in exile, which is very good. So when people around the world are taking interest in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, Tibetans also have to accordingly think how to preserve it differently. So for thousands of years, we have preserved this teaching, not just in words, but we engaged in this study, and whatever we have studied, we have integrated it within our minds so that we are able to develop the experience of the teaching. And in terms of the three trainings of morality, concentration, and wisdom, particularly developing the wisdom with the help of morality and concentration. And so not only just keeping it in words, but we have kept it very profoundly, this profound tradition. And what we find in our tradition, the Dharma, are also shared with the modern scientists. So I meet with many modern scientists who take interest in studying from the Buddha Dharma. And so spirituality or religion is not just about doing some prayers and, gathering, saying some rituals in a gathering, but it is about how to transform our mind, helping our mind to transform. And so in that sense, the Dharma becomes practical to help our mind. So have you finished your tea? So I'll have my tea first, then. So with regard to the Buddha Dharma, there's an increasing interest from around the world, it seems. So because of our use of logic and reason, and not just faith, people who are educated, learned, and who are thinking through seriously, and they seem to take interest in the Buddha Dharma. So what is important now for us as Buddhists is to study the Buddha Dharma, its philosophy, and not just doing prayers and rituals, but thinking through by studying the teaching. So with regard to the teaching, the three principal aspects of the path are there of the thought of renunciation, or thought definitely to leave the samsara, the cycle of existence, and the altruistic spirit of enlightenment, or bodhicitta, and the correct view. So with regard to the renunciation, the thought of renunciation, of course, it doesn't lead us directly to the omniscient state of Buddhahood, but it must be complemented or followed up by bodhicitta and the view of correct view. And so, the Buddha himself gave teaching from his own experience. So, having developed the experience of these paths, he taught us. So, through the practice of the three trainings of morality, concentration, and wisdom, he became fully enlightened and then gave us the teaching. And then in Tibet, the teaching of the Buddha, particularly this Nalanda tradition, was brought to Tibet by Master Abbot Chandrakshita. And so Tibetan kings and leaders have invited Indian masters, and therefore, having received these teachings, we have studied the teachings and also meditated on the teaching of the Buddha. And so, in other words, the three trainings is what we practice. So, with regard to the three principal aspects of the path, the renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view, these are called the three principal aspects of the path to enlightenment. So, with regard to the thought of renunciation, you are not attracted to the beauties or the excellence of the cycle of existence. And then you actually turn away from it and to thinking of reaching that of liberation, nirvana. So without feeling attracted to or preoccupied with the pleasures of samsara. So if, of course, having developed this thought of renunciation, if you don't have that of the correct and the perfect path, the excellent path leading to omniscient state, you need you will not reach there, and therefore you need to have bodhicitta, the spirit of enlightenment, and the correct view. And so, therefore, right from the beginning of my life, daily life, I practice and meditate on bodhicitta. And when I hear all these bad, sad news of the world, that also helps me to develop renunciation, the thought of renunciation, or thought definitely to leave this samsara. And then when you understand that all these things, whatever is happening in the world, suffering and all these are rooted in ignorance, and therefore Buddha Dharma has very much to do with the workings of our mind and emotions. And therefore, one is led also to understand how things are dependently originated, and therefore the correct view. So I was born in Amdo, which was a region ruled at that time by Ma Fufang, and then I moved to central Tibet, and I find the teaching of the Buddha that I have studied to be something amazing. And today, when we talk about Buddhism, the teaching of the Buddha, or the inner science, there are people who praise it, appreciate and praise it. But that is not enough, but we need to know what the teaching of the Buddha is all about. We have to understand it. So if you have the thought of renunciation, you will also have the thought to reach or attain or achieve liberation from samsara. Pursue. And when you have that, then you will also take interest in the teaching of emptiness, the view of emptiness. So if you really think through regarding these principles of renunciation and correct view, you will have some taste of it and have some feeling about them. So I tell my Dharma friends that these three principles, or the three principal aspects of the path, renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view, should be integrated within yourself. And you should feel that it is not right for me if I cannot make these my own experience within my being. And so, therefore, you should think through regarding these three principles. So the text begins by homage to the most venerable teachers. I shall explain here to the best of my ability the essential points of the scriptures of the conqueror, the path claimed by all excellent bodhisattvas, the great way for the fortunate ones aspiring for liberation. Those who are not attached to the joys of cyclic existence, who strive to make meaningful this life of leisure and opportunity, and who place their trust in the path that pleases the conquerors, O fortunate ones, listen with an open heart. Without pure renunciation, there is no means to pacify the yearning for the joys and fruits of samsaric ocean. And as craving for existence chain us thoroughly, at first search for a true renunciation. So with regard to renunciation here, the thought definitely to leave samsara. So without seeing the samsara to be essenceless, without any meaning, and if you are not able to develop this renunciation, then you will not practice the dharma correctly. And so it is important for us to turn the dharma into a dharma practice. And as craving for existence chain us thoroughly, at first search for true renunciation by cultivating in mind that this human life is so hard to find, yet has no time to spare. Preoccupations with this life will cease. By contemplating repeatedly the truth of karma and samsaric suffering, preoccupation with next life will come to ease. And so this life of opportunity and leisure, of course, will end, get destroyed in the end. Therefore, it says, by cultivating the mind, that this human life is so hard to find, yet so there's no time to spare. Preoccupation with this life will cease. By contemplating repeatedly the truth of karma and samsaric suffering, preoccupations with next life will come to cease. As you habituate in this way, and when not even an instant of admiration arises for the prosperities of cyclic existence, and when the thought aspiring for liberation arises day and night, at this point true renunciation has arisen. So that is about renunciation. And next comes about bodhicitta. Such renunciation too, if it is not sustained by pure awakening mind, it will not become a course for the perfect bliss of unexcelled unexalt enlightenment. Therefore, O intelligent ones, generate the excellent awakening of mind. They are being swept away. They are being swept away constantly by 4 powerful rivers. They are bound tightly with fetters of karma, most difficult to escape. They are trapped inside the iron mesh of self-grasping. They are enveloped from everywhere by thick mist of ignorance. They take birth within cyclic existence, has no end. There is no end, where they are endlessly tormented by the 3 sufferings. By reflecting on all your mothers who suffer such conditions, please regenerate the supreme awakening mind. And then next comes the correct view. If you do not have the wisdom realizing the ultimate nature, even if you gain familiarity with renunciation and awakening, you will not be able to cut root of samsaric existence. So strive in the means of realizing dependent origination. When, with respect to all phenomena of samsara and nirvana, you see that cause and effects never deceive their laws, and when you have dismantled the focus of objectification, at that point you have entered the path that pleases the Buddhas. So as long as 2 understandings of appearance, which is undeceiving, dependent origination, and emptiness devoid of all thesis, remain separate, so long you have not realized the intent of the sage. And then next comes verse number 12, which says, however, at that point, when without alteration, but at once, the instant you see that dependent origination is undeceiving, if the entire object of grasping at certitude is dismantled, at that point, your analysis of the view has culminated. Therefore, furthermore, when appearance dispels the extremes of existence, and when emptiness dispels the extreme of non-existence, and if you understand how emptiness arises as cause and effect, you'll never be captivated by views grasping at extremes. Now, in this final verse, verse number 14, Master Tsongkhapa calls on you, the disciples, as O son or O child. So he's using a very intimate language. So when it comes to the dharma practice, you, without resorting only to scriptural authority, but using reason, you will find, the logic and reason, you'll find the truth of the teaching to be quite profound. So thus, when you have understood as they are the essentials of the 3 principal aspects of the path, O son, seek solitude, and by enhancing the power of perseverance, swiftly accomplishing your ultimate aspiration. This advice was given by the monk Losang Tragpa Bel to Ngawang Tragpa, a leading person of Tsako region. So in conclusion of this Dharma discourse, we'll do the Bodhicitta and Bodhisattva vows. So when you read books on Bodhicitta, they really move you. It's something very special experience. So, with regards to Shantideva's Bodhisattvacharya Avatar, a guide to the Bodhisattva way of life, or engaging in the Bodhisattva deeds, when you read and reflect on his teaching, it really moves you. And you are moved to such an extent that you will have the courage and the determination to work for all sentient beings across the expanse of space. And so, in the past, the Buddha himself, when he began training in the path to enlightenment, he generated or cultivated this Bodhicitta, excellent Bodhicitta within himself, and we should also think of imitating the Buddha. And so perhaps that is what I would say. So imagine the Buddha surrounded by masters of the 8 close Bodhisattva disciples, and also the masters of Sajanying Magelo Kagyu, etc., of the Tibetan Buddhist traditions. So we are saying the 7-limb prayer first. So there is a 7-limb prayer. This is the verse for the Bodhisattva. So I actually refuge in the 3 jewels. I confess each and every wrongdoing. I rejoice in the virtues of all beings. I take to heart the Buddha state of Buddhahood. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha Dharma and Supreme Assembly. In order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I shall develop the spirit of enlightenment. Having developed the spirit of my enlightenment, I shall invite all sentient beings as my guests. I shall enact the delightful Supreme enlightened practices. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So His Holiness is saying that in verse number 2, where it says, in order to fulfill the aims of myself and others, I shall develop the spirit of enlightenment. This is very powerful. These are very powerful lines that moves him. And it is very important for us to think of liberating all sentient beings without exception. So we'll not go through these verses 3 times as usual, as we usually do. But here, with regard to Bodhicitta, you are actually aiming to reach Buddhahood, which is free from all faults and replete with all excellent qualities. And so the aim is for the benefit of all sentient beings, and therefore your mental scope is quite wide. And it really sums up the courage that you, the determination that you have for all sentient beings. So I also daily do this practice of bodhicitta, and so one really gains this the determination to work for oneself and all sentient beings to reach enlightenment. So these are verses that come from Bodhisattva-charya-avatara, now come what may, and so forth. Today my life has borne fruit. Having well obtained this human existence, I have been born into the family of the Buddha, and now am one of Buddha's children. Thus, whatever actions I do from now on must be nice in accord with the family tradition. Never shall I do anything to disgrace this holy, faultless family. So, if we look around in the world, we see that people are more or less obsessed with using arms and forces to overcome others. But we, as practitioners of the Buddha Dharma, should not do that. What we have learned from our experience in the world at large is there's no real good fruit from using arms and forces. After having killed so many people, there's only suffering. So, leaving aside our attachment, anger, hatred, if we could think of benefiting all sentient beings, it is very important to develop this excellent bodhicitta within ourselves. And so, we, the practitioners gathered here, should hold the bodhicitta to be our primary aim to develop within ourselves. Even in our prayers, we should have this determination to develop bodhicitta. There are a few questions. No.
生生世世不离大乘善知识的主因为何？如何与每天生活中及此因？给我他们就读，给我信念到我们这就做到，看应能。
So, what is the main cause for us not to be separated from from our spiritual masters? And in our daily life, what should we do to create that? So, with those people, the masters with whom we have Dharma connection, from whom we have received teachings directly or indirectly. So if you could practice what you have received, the teachings that you have received from these teachers sincerely, then that will create. If you make this determination to heed the teachings or the advice of my teachers, then you will be able to create such a cause.
观想自己发起菩提心，有一天所观想的就会变成限量吗？你们大概打限量接受，讲句给什么讲呢？
If we practice bodhicitta, such as equaling and exchanging oneself and others, would they become real in the end? As it is said that as you familiarize yourself, your mind, with certain practice, I mean, the principles will become your experience. That is something that is natural to happen. So it is the case with bodhicitta. As you practice and try to develop bodhicitta and think and reflect on bodhicitta on a daily basis, you will feel closer and closer to this bodhicitta. And when you think along these lines, may all sentient beings have no suffering and its causes, may all sentient beings have happiness and its causes. So as you familiarize your mind, these practices become, these principles become easier for you, as it is the case with regard to familiarity with these practices. So in the world, of course, people do pay attention to education, but there is not much interest or attention to being paid to bodhicitta. So if we could familiarize ourselves, habituate our mind with the bodhicitta and the correct view of emptiness, it will, of course, happen in time that these become your experience. I practice bodhicitta and the view of emptiness, and because of that, there's something that seems solid within me with regard to these two experiences. And so it is quite natural to have the experience once you familiarize your mind with them. With regard to bodhicitta, a beginner bodhisattva so what are the causes that would cause you to decline, your bodhicitta to decline for a beginner practitioner? So, of course, if you keep persevering in your practice, there's no way it can decline. But if you just think of, if you have tried to develop bodhicitta out of some kind of an instinct or some immediate kind of a course and conditions, without perseverance, then, of course, there is danger of losing bodhicitta. So for us, if we could develop bodhicitta and try to develop bodhicitta within ourselves and the view of emptiness within ourselves, through familiarization, day on and day in and day out, if you could do this, persevere in your practice, then you will be able to make it firm within yourself. So it's in your hands, in other words. So what are the causes that will lead you to attain a higher rebirth throughout your future lifetimes? So when will you be able to develop that? So the main cause is bodhicitta, and then the view of emptiness. On my part, as soon as I wake up in the morning, I reflect and meditate on bodhicitta and the view of emptiness. And so these are the two main factors for reaching or attaining higher rebirth in the next life. So that's all.
我们一起回向。文殊师利勇猛智，普贤慧行亦复然。我今回向诸善根，随彼一切常修学，三世诸佛所称叹，如是最胜诸大愿。我今回向诸善根，未得普贤殊胜行。
더 다뤄.
求亲所寄付之质量，无限宽广如空尽所有，唯道于此彼上慧眼中，我愿速得成就圣者王，唯道必为深深论专用，皆得文殊菩萨悲摄受，至于显密圣道全次第，无间修习令诸圣者心，我所世界殊胜道炼药，皆有梦里大悲因方便，无欲灭除众生于梦心，长久主持法往生者教，诸梵佛陀圣教为霹雳，我虽以梦毗护复衰微，心为大悲所感激撼动，咸阳如是离了法眼藏，佛即佛之心尽悉有也，愿具所成菩提道次第，其是以求解脱众者心，永无生者无边大誓言，成般修道广大妙纯愿，即除为愿障碍人非人，愿如生生世世不远离，诸佛所赞圆满清净道，若是如理精勤恒修习，最极深成道中是法心，而是历史不设常作伴，即向大海遍极光释放，以美皆为内见见瑞喜，大众请起立。具美见美王波将美扬，昂见给美足见宗可巴罗桑扎贝。 己美谦卑王波将北洋，康健谦卑主权中可巴罗桑扎贝夏拉索瓦德。弥美皆为的先见瑞西基美谦卑王波将北洋，刚健谦卑主权中可波罗桑扎贝夏拉索瓦德，弥美皆为的前见瑞西基美谦卑王波将北洋，刚健谦卑主权中可巴罗桑扎贝夏拉索